No one in the office expected that the quiet man who walked in that morning, carrying a diaper bag over one shoulder and a sleepy baby in his arms, was about to change more than just his own life. And by the end of this story, you'll understand why one unexpected moment can rewrite an entire future. Daniel Harper had not planned to bring his daughter to work. In fact, he had spent most of the night pacing his small apartment, trying to figure out any other solution. Babysitters cost money he didn't have, and his usual neighbor who helped occasionally had left town unexpectedly. Missing work wasn't an option either. Daniel was already behind on rent, and this job was the only thing keeping their lives from falling apart completely. His daughter, Lily, only 8 months old, slept peacefully against his chest that morning as he stood in front of the office building, staring at the glass doors. He adjusted the strap of the diaper bag and took a deep breath. Just get through the day, he whispered to himself. Daniel had been working as a junior project coordinator at the company for 2 years. He was reliable, quiet, and hard-working, but he kept mostly to himself. Few people in the office knew much about his personal life, and even fewer knew that he was raising Lily alone. Her mother had left shortly after Lily was born, unable to cope with the responsibilities of parenthood. Daniel never spoke bitterly about it, he simply focused on what mattered, his daughter. When he stepped into the office, conversations slowed. A few co-workers glanced at him, then at the baby, then back again. One woman at reception smiled warmly, but most people looked surprised, unsure of what to say. Daniel kept his head down and walked to his desk, setting Lily carefully in a small portable seat beside him. She blinked awake, looking around curiously, her tiny fingers gripping the edge of her blanket. For the first hour, things went better than Daniel expected. Lily played quietly with a soft toy while Daniel answered emails and reviewed spreadsheets. A few co-workers stopped by, their initial surprise softening into smiles. Babies had a way of doing that, melting tension without trying. But by late morning, Lily grew restless. She began to fuss, her small cries echoing louder in the otherwise quiet office. Daniel picked her up quickly, rocking her gently, whispering to calm her. "I'm sorry," he murmured, though he wasn't sure whether he was apologizing to Lily or to everyone around him. He carried her to the break room, warming a bottle and pacing slowly until she settled again. As he stood there, he caught his reflection in the microwave door, tired eyes, rumpled shirt, and a faint shadow of exhaustion that never seemed to leave his face anymore. For a moment, doubt crept in. Was he failing her? Was he barely holding things together? But Lily looked up at him and smiled, one of those wide, trusting smiles that made everything else fade away. And just like that, Daniel felt steady again. He returned to his desk, determined to finish the day no matter what. Around noon, a message popped up on his computer, "Daniel, please come to my office when you're free." It was from Margaret Collins, the company's senior director, and Daniel's boss. His stomach tightened. He glanced at Lily, who was now dozing peacefully again. He knew what this might mean. Companies had policies. Offices weren't daycare centers. He couldn't blame them if they asked him to leave. Taking a deep breath, Daniel lifted Lily gently into his arms and walked down the hallway. Margaret's office was spacious but simple, with large windows that let in streams of soft daylight. She was standing near her desk when Daniel knocked. "Come in," she said. Daniel stepped inside, holding Lily carefully, trying to keep his voice steady. "I'm sorry, I know this isn't professional. I didn't have any other choice today. It won't happen again." Margaret didn't answer immediately. She looked at Lily, who blinked awake and stared back with curious eyes. Something in Margaret's expression softened, but Daniel couldn't read what it meant. "I see," she said quietly. "How old is she?" 8 months, Daniel replied. Margaret nodded slowly, then gestured for him to sit. Daniel hesitated but obeyed, his heart still pounding. "I've noticed your work, Daniel," she said after a moment. "You're one of the most consistent people on this team. You stay late, you meet deadlines, and you never complain." Daniel wasn't sure where this was going, but he listened carefully. What I didn't know, Margaret continued, is how much you're carrying outside of this office. Daniel looked down at Lily, gently brushing a strand of soft hair from her forehead. For a moment, he felt exposed, as if all the quiet struggles of the past year were suddenly visible. I just do what I have to, he said softly. Margaret studied him for a long moment, her expression thoughtful. Then she said something that surprised him. Tell me what your days are really like. Daniel hesitated. He wasn't used to talking about himself, especially at work. But something in her tone felt sincere, and before he realized it, he found himself speaking, about sleepless nights, about rushing home to feed Lily, about budgeting every dollar, about the quiet fear of losing the fragile stability he had fought so hard to build. Margaret listened without interrupting. When he finished, the room was silent for a few seconds. Then she said, "That's a heavy load for one person." Daniel nodded faintly. "It is. But she's worth it." Lily stirred slightly in his arms, as if agreeing. Margaret walked to the window, looking out over the city. Daniel couldn't see her face, and the silence stretched long enough to make his nerves return. Was this the moment she would tell him he couldn't bring Lily again? Was he about to lose the one job keeping them afloat? Finally, Margaret turned back toward him. There was something different in her eyes now, something Daniel couldn't quite place. "Daniel," she said, "I've been thinking about something for a while. And seeing you here today has made me certain." Daniel's heart began to race again. "I'd like to make you a proposal." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning, but Daniel had no idea what they meant yet. And in that moment, holding his daughter in the quiet office, he sensed that whatever she was about to say might change everything, but he had no way of knowing how. Daniel felt the weight of those words settle into the room. "I'd like to make you a proposal." For a split second, his mind prepared for the worst. Maybe she was offering severance. Maybe she was about to suggest he take unpaid leave. Maybe this was the polite beginning of the end. Margaret returned to her seat and folded her hands on the desk. Her voice, when she spoke again, was calm, but there was conviction behind it. "Our company has been discussing expanding into remote project management for months," she said. "Flexible structures. Hybrid teams. Family-inclusive policies. We've talked about innovation in meetings, but today I saw what innovation actually looks like." Daniel blinked, confused. Margaret continued. "You've been performing at a level equal to senior coordinators, while raising an infant alone. That tells me something about your discipline and your character. So here's my proposal, I want to promote you to lead remote project manager." Daniel stared at her, certain he had misheard. "Promote me?" "Yes," she said firmly. "The role would allow you to work primarily from home. You'd manage digital teams, coordinate schedules, oversee deadlines. You'd also help us design a pilot program for flexible working parents. I want you to lead it." Daniel's breath caught in his throat. A promotion meant higher pay. Stability. Security. The very thing he had been praying for during sleepless nights. But more than that, it meant trust. I don't know what to say," he whispered. Margaret's expression softened. "There's more." Daniel's heart skipped again. "As part of this pilot program, we plan to create a small on-site childcare space in the building. Nothing extravagant, just a safe, supervised area for employees who occasionally need support. I've been hesitant about the logistics." She glanced at Lily. "But today convinced me. If we don't adapt, we lose talented people." Daniel felt his eyes sting unexpectedly. "You're not just surviving," Margaret said. "You're showing up. And I believe companies should support that, not punish it." Lily suddenly let out a happy squeal, as if she understood the importance of the moment. Margaret laughed quietly. Daniel swallowed hard. "Why me?" Margaret didn't hesitate. "Because you're not asking for special treatment. You're asking for a chance to keep going. That matters." For months, Daniel had felt invisible, just another employee trying not to fall behind. He had never imagined his quiet persistence had been noticed. He thought of the nights rocking Lily when she cried. The mornings counting coins before buying groceries. The silent promise he made the day her mother left, that he would never let Lily feel abandoned. And now, someone was offering him not pity, but possibility. "What would I need to do?" he asked carefully. Margaret smiled slightly. "Accept. Work hard, like you already do. Help us build something better." Daniel looked down at Lily. Her small fingers wrapped around his thumb, gripping tightly. In that simple touch, he felt clarity. "I accept," he said. Margaret extended her hand. "Then welcome to your new role, Daniel." As he shook her hand, something inside him shifted, not just relief, but dignity. For the first time in a long while, he felt seen. The weeks that followed were not magically easy. There were still sleepless nights and tight schedules. Learning to manage a remote team came with new challenges. Designing a flexible work pilot required patience and negotiation. But Daniel approached it with the same quiet determination he brought to fatherhood. He worked from his small apartment, Lily playing beside him as he coordinated meetings and developed policies. Sometimes she babbled during video calls, and instead of irritation, his team responded with smiles. Slowly, the culture began to shift. Margaret kept her promise. Within 3 months, a modest childcare room opened in the office. It wasn't fancy, just soft mats, toys, a certified caregiver, but it represented something bigger. Other employees began to open up. A single mother from accounting admitted she had been considering quitting before the childcare option existed. A father in marketing asked about flexible scheduling. Productivity didn't drop, it improved. Daniel realized something powerful: vulnerability, when met with understanding, becomes strength. One afternoon, months later, Daniel visited the office with Lily, now walking unsteadily, gripping his finger as they entered. The same co-workers who had once looked surprised now greeted them warmly. Margaret met them near the entrance. "She's grown," Margaret said with a smile. Daniel laughed. "She has." They walked past the childcare room, where 2 toddlers were stacking blocks while a caregiver supervised. Daniel felt something tighten in his chest, not anxiety this time, but gratitude. "I should be thanking you," Margaret said quietly. "You pushed us to become better." Daniel shook his head. "I didn't push. I just showed up." "Exactly," she replied. Later that evening, after returning home, Daniel sat on the floor with Lily resting against his chest. The apartment was still modest. Life was still busy. But there was no longer a constant shadow of fear over their future. He realized something important: strength doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like a tired father walking into work with a baby in his arms because he refuses to give up. And leadership doesn't always come from authority. Sometimes it begins with compassion. As Lily drifted to sleep, Daniel whispered the same words he had said months ago, but this time, they felt different. "We're going to be okay." Because sometimes, the most unexpected proposals aren't romantic or grand. Sometimes they're opportunities, moments where someone chooses belief over judgment. And in choosing belief, they change not just one life, but many. If you take anything from this story, let it be this: you never know who is quietly fighting battles beside you. A little understanding can open doors that talent alone cannot. Show up. Keep going. And when you have the power to lift someone, do it. Because the day a single dad carried his daughter into work wasn't the day everything almost fell apart. It was the day everything finally began.